Hello everybody. It's been a long time since we've met, so in case you've forgotten who I am, my name's Geoff Collett. A little while ago, Daniel Beckett asked me if I would share a promise that God had made to me that was particularly important in my life. So I thought I'd do that whilst I was over here in Spain. In case you're wondering why I'm here in Spain, have you ever tried to get to see a dentist in the UK recently? So to do this, I want to take you back nearly 40 years to a time when I was a young man just turned 21. And that's not because God's promises only really matter back there in the midst of time, but because that's when this long-running promise really began to mean something to me. I was facing 2.5 years of being stuck away from friends and family, and without any real prospect of communication, no chance of visitors, just myself and a few other guys. So being away from church and being away from family was a big thing for me. I was only relatively young in my faith at that time. I've just realised that perhaps you're wondering if I'm about to make some revelation of a misdemeanour in my life and spending the time at Her Majesty's pleasure in some prison somewhere. But I want to just clarify that I did actually volunteer for what was a position working on an Antarctic island down in the Southern Ocean, down at the bottom of the world. God's promises are recorded in Matthew 28, and he says that he will be with us to the end of the world. Now in the NIV, I think it says to the end of the age, which is a more literal and theologically correct translation, because he's really talking about God being with us for all of time. But I hope you'll forgive me if I use a sort of a geographical interpretation of it and talk about God being with us even at the end of the earth. So I had no church structure or friends or Christian family around me to support me and encourage me in my faith in God. Time to find out, I guess, how real my faith was. The Antarctic is an isolated place, and it can be quite dangerous at times, and it's not very forgiving. If you make a mistake, there can be dire consequences. And so, because of that, many people find it a fearful place. But being alone, albeit in close proximity to 13 other guys, I guess too that the loneliness was a mental challenge for me as well. Would God and my trust in him, my faith in him, just become something that was in the past? Almost like a fairy tale and not really relevant to my life anymore. Well, the odd thing is I felt closer to God then than I have done in many, many years. In fact, all of my previous life prior to that time. I worked outside every day, and usually the weather was very grim, always blowing a gale, and very cold. But once a month, the gale force wind would stop, and the sky would clear to the deep blue that you see here in Spain, and it would be very, very quiet. And I would be standing on the top of a hill, gazing across the most incredible view, across the sea ice, to the snow-covered mountains and glaciers in the islands beyond our island. And the air is so clear in the Antarctic and so still that you can see for many, many miles, I think about 50 miles to the end of the island chain, as clear as anything. Absolutely unbelievable sight. And I felt that God was showing me what he had created for his enjoyment, for his pleasure. He was showing it to me because he wanted me to enjoy it and to get pleasure from it. So I found great comfort in that, and I didn't feel alone and vulnerable, which many would have done in that situation. No other human for 800 miles in the direction I was looking. So yes, I could have felt lonely, but I didn't. I would get a similar feeling in many respects if I went out at night when the sky was clear. Because again, the skies are very, very clear in the Antarctic when there are no clouds. And the stars would just be so cold and so bright, not twinkling like they are in the UK through our warm, dusty and humid air. There in the Antarctic, they're so close. They seem so close that you could just reach out and touch them. So incredibly beautiful, and I knew the God who had created them. Now I'd only stand there for a while because it's pretty cold in the Antarctic at night, so I'd retreat to my slightly less cold room in the base buildings, and there often I would read my Bible, and largely because I'd read all the other books that there were in our small library there, and there were no other forms of entertainment like there are these days. So it was a really great opportunity to learn more about God and his promises to us, because I had the time to do that. Now maybe you are feeling a little bit lonely at this present time, cut off from friends and family because of the circumstances we're in. And I guess it's going to be no good me telling you that you've got it really good with all your digital communication, with your WhatsApp and your FaceTime and telephone and all the rest of it. Because I know that digital communication doesn't quite cut it. I know that because it's not the same for me talking to Carol back in Godmanchester by WhatsApp as it is when I'm there meeting her face to face. Although I will get 2 weeks of quarantine, that's assuming that she stays in the house with me, I will get my 2 weeks of quarantine to spend time talking to her very soon. Well, the thing is, I only had 200 words in a telex and a couple of letters every year when the ships came in to talk to people. But I did have an awful lot of time to talk to God, and that was amazing. And it was an opportunity really to hear God's still small voice speaking to me in a way that was very difficult for me, having just come out of a student life full of busyness. But there I had the opportunity to hear God speaking to me. So whether you're at the bottom of the world or in some other far-flung place or hiding away in your COVID bunker, maybe this is an opportunity for you to hear God's still small voice speaking to you. Often we talk about God being with us at all times and accompanying us on our journey. Remember that footsteps in the sand story. Well, I don't think it's quite like that. It's almost better to think that God is there before you arrive. He has prepared the place because he knows where you are going. He knows your future and what will happen with you. So this is really just an encouragement that wherever you are and wherever you stay, he is always with you. So whether for you current times are absolutely crazy busy, or whether you've got time on your hands, or whether you're a bit worried about the government's indecision or the U-turns that they do, or the crazy antics of the orange guy across the pond, or maybe you're worried that you're not worried enough about Brexit, which is happening in a couple of months' time, or even the big problems that the world faces from an environmental perspective. Remember that he is always with you. He understands and knows the future. So maybe instead of this being a time of fear, it should be a time of listening to his words and to be enjoying the things, the beautiful things that he has made and wants to show us. So I hope that's an encouragement to you at this time. And one other thing before I go, in case you're wondering whether social distancing really works, I should point out that during the 8 months when the ships hadn't come in, we never got a cold on our island, and we never had a cough, and we never got ill. But as soon as the ship turned up, everybody got sick. Mind you, that was 800 miles of social distancing, and you're only being asked to do 2 meters of social distancing at any one time. But I'm just saying. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you're encouraged. Keep safe, and God bless.